With the award-winning Aviva pension, you get the freedom to invest. With the award-winning Aviva pension, you get the freedom to invest. With the award-winning Aviva pension, you get the freedom to invest.
Broadcaster Pro.
The Rodecaster Pro is like this video is not live stream and video back, but I should be able to go over here to my source, the Rodecaster, and the other into your computer, and then you should see is a USB-C cable, plug one end into the Rodecaster and the other into your computer, and then you should see when you open OBS that the Rodecaster Pro now shows up as an audio source. So now I should be able to go over here to my sources, add an audio input source, and we can call this one Rodecaster, and then when we select the device, the Rodecaster Pro automatically shows up, and everything that's happening in the Rodecaster Pro is now being directly put into OBS and out on your live stream. So this is really helpful if you just want to
Are we back? Have we got it? My God, honestly. What a performance. I think that should be us now. Guys, give me the heads up if we're back in business. Let me just get this finalised. Settings. It's us, ready to go. We're a couple of minutes late. Oh no. I'm telling you, these things are an absolute nightmare. Whether it's the camera or anything else, there's always a problem. Looks better just now. Let's get rid of that. And now you can hear me. Terrific. How are we, Oliver Cromwell, Ken? Good to have you on board, guys. Sorry for the delay there. Let me just check us going out on YouTube, and make sure we're getting actually something. Yeah, what a plava. Yeah, David, it's working great, mate. Great, fantastic. Yeah, not the best, but it was actually plugged in but not being recognised by the OBS, which is a bit strange. It had been plugged in and it looked like it was working and not doing it. Ollie says he's good. Good, mate. Good. That's good. Good to see you. Good to see you, Preston journalist as well, doing some great work there, buddy. So I thought I would, because there's been I've been listening to other people's streams, and especially on their X. Now let me just check that this is actually going up on X Space, and it looks like there's some movement for me hosting this. So just let me see if this is actually working on this, and then we can move forward. Let me just get this up. Let's see. Oh, crypto now. I just want to make sure this is going on the space, and then we can move. We'll get cracking on the subject matter at hand. Where is that? That's weird. You can't find that either. Yeah, it was a bit strange trying to put on the sound, because it was all plugged in. So I had to unplug it and plug it in again. Something relatively simple, but you have to plug it in and plug it and then replug it. So what did you have for dinner, Davey? A wee cheeky korma? No, I've not actually eaten just now, because I knew this was going to take a period of time. This is behind the scenes here is never easy. So let me just see if this is if I'm getting some sound here. Is this actually? I don't actually know if you hear me on. Is guys, somebody go on X and see if they hear me on X as well. So I know that this is actually going out. As I said, this is the first time we've gone out on both YouTube and X together. And there's obviously it's not been the easiest as usual. It's never the easiest. Let me just get this. Here we go. let me get you guys in the middle now. This is actually going to be probably a better way in the left wing on this. Okay, so I think we've got the sound on that, and we are, I think, request co-host, invite a co-host, approve. Right, Ken, carry on. ADF party, let's go. Hello, Ken, can you hear me?
Yes, hear you loud and clear, David. How you doing?
Aye, not too bad, mate. Thanks very much. I'm glad you came on to make sure that I was coming on both. So that's the sound on both YouTube and X coming on at the same time. So that's terrific.
You're a technological wonder.
Yeah, well, I don't think so. I really genuinely think you need individual experts to actually do the sound, the lighting and everything else. To be honest with you, it's a bit tricky doing it all yourself and trying to do the podcast. But yeah, carry on, Ken. If you want to kick it off, I was going to do a wee background, but if you want to have a wee chat about the subject matter at hand, then please feel free.
Aye, well, probably if you've got something prepared, David, might as well cracking on with that and let you start with that.
Right, okay, so I'm just going to do an overview. Just now I'll put you back again, Mike, that's great. And we'll do an overview of what the globalist agenda is and what we are looking forward to in the policies that are going to be implemented. And I would suggest that Jennifer Lawrence is, so yeah, X is working and so is YouTube. So, and you can come on, and if you want to come on and have a chat on X as well, you can actually have a verbal chat on X as well, which you obviously can't do on YouTube. So, what's the agenda? What would be the anti-globalist agenda? Would only be, and because the anti-globalist agenda would be the opposite of the globalist agenda, then you would have to know what the globalist agenda would be to be against it, and what the direction of travel, and also not just the direction of travel, but what they've already stated is the direction of travel. So we're just not pulling things out of the blue and not actually having some basis for the anti-globalist agenda. So first of all, we have to know the globalist agenda to know the anti-globalist agenda, which is pretty logical and straightforward. So the globalist agenda is almost like the Hunger Games. It looks like from the outside. And what it is looks like is that everybody else is the workers, and then you have the privileged globalist class, the corporatists. What they're pretty much offering is communism and Islam for you and corporatism for them. And there'll be underlying reasons why they're doing what they're doing and the way they're doing it. And I think the thought of them actually caring about you as the individual or being liberal, there's a lot of people that are saying this is a liberal agenda. It's very much not. It's an illiberal agenda. What it is a corporatist agenda. It's not a capitalist agenda, because a capitalist agenda, you wouldn't get them lobbying the state to bring in rules that prevent competition. So this is a corporatist, this is a group of elite, and we'll go into, somebody mentioned US aid, and we'll come on to that later on, but that's just a part of the overall picture. And the reason is that this is not to benefit all of us. This is to prevent competition, to have, if not monopolies, oligopolies, to make it harder to get even lending, to make it a capitalist system. And what they do is they're lobbying government to restrict individual freedoms and to also move the move the actual political process forward for the one world currency and the one world government, which again will be almost like a Hunger Games sort of scenario, where you have the ruling class who will not have any laws that are going to be relevant to them, but the laws are for you. And as we're seeing just now, the laws are becoming increasingly discriminatory. I would also suggest that justice in a liberal society would apply to all based on the crime. Social justice is a communist concept, and I'll come on to who the communists are in plain sight and who they aren't. And social justice is a communist term, where you're saying by dint of being in a certain group, feudalism, yeah. So by being in a certain group, you are oppressed. And again, it goes back to Marxian terms, the oppressed and the oppressor. And this is the problem, that we're getting sort of deluded into thinking that this is a liberal concept. The liberal stance would be everybody should be treated the same, and regardless of what economic class or societal position that you're in, that you should be judged based on the law. That's a legal concept. That's a justice concept, not a social justice concept, which is basically racist, sexist and discriminatory. So we are now, and we've allowed ourselves to move in greater depth to this social construct. It's not just a two-tier, it's multi-tiered. Yeah, that's exactly right, mate. It's multi-tiered based on the progressive stack. That we've got to listen to black women, but I don't mind listening to black women if they're making sense. If an individual's making sense, again, but that's a liberal position. It doesn't matter what they look like or what sex they are. Obviously, gender is a social construct, a bit like race. Both of these are social construct, because if you can change your race and change your gender, then that's subjective. And if it's subjective, we shouldn't be legislating for it. So, and that's down to the individual and how the individual wants to relate in the world. But the anti-globalist agenda would either, I mean, you could take it from a left or right position here. The anti-globalist or a populist position would be to increase socialism stroke potentially communism if you took it to the extreme. And you've got the other extreme, which is the far right, which would be capitalism and not corporatism. And also you would have enforcement of national boundaries and not the move, or individualism or at least localism, and not the move towards technocracies, where the United Nations, the Commission, the EU Commission, who are not elected bodies yet are legislating, like the courts in Europe as well, the European courts, who are not accountable. Neither is our judiciary. So our judiciary are making immigration policy by letting people stay who have even broken the law. And they're not accountable to the people, and B, even to the executive, who may want to have a different immigration policy than is being given just now. So this is a multifaceted thing. So we're going for no democracy. So we're looking at communists like Angela Merkel, who was a communist, open borders, a puppet of the WEF, and shilling for the globalists. We've got now Keir Starmer, who's cancelling democratic elections now, which I would suggest that all of us should be very, very aware of. The EU, the WHO, the WEF, they're all in sync, yeah. And this is what we've got to understand, that this is it's a mass it's not a conspiracy theory, because we all know, because they're open about what they're doing. They're telling us that they're going to do 15-minute cities. Both Kemi Badenoch was on trigonometry, and Kemi Badenoch had said that she was going to do something about immigration, when the Conservative Party have let in 1.2 million legal migrants into the UK. This is the gaslighting that's going on. Keir Starmer could stop the illegal boats, but they don't want to, because that's their policy. So to start gaslighting, we're going to do something, is just nonsense. So they are not prepared to do anything about this. They all know, because they're part of the club, that they're all in it together. And as I said, like Keir Starmer, now they're being blatantly undemocratic. A communist, a Pabloist, which is a form of Trotskyism for those who don't know. I'm sure all my baby gorillas are all cultured and they understand politics. But these are communists. And these are communists who are trying to bring in social justice, a communist term. The word racist from Trotsky's How to Destroy Murder People book. And the Conservatives, exactly, but how to destroy and murder people. And he's calling everybody else racist. And while I'm sure that Trotsky was in the cabinet with Stalin, who helped with the Holodomor and brought the Bolsheviks in power and murdered tons of people as well. Starmer is a Pabloist, which we were warned about prior to the election. And not only that, the Labour Party have put up a statue to Frederick Engels in Manchester, who has been the ideological inspiration, as well as Karl Marx, who have become the ideological inspiration for mass murder in multiple countries, worse than the Nazis, and all the Nazis were leading communists within Germany. This is what we don't get told in school. That Hitler was a communist in 1919. The ideas, although it became anti-Semitic, he was still at a Jewish funeral in 1919 and serving somebody who was starving Bavarians out in Bavaria in Germany. So we don't get told this. We get told that the Nazis are far right or right wing, but Giovanni Gentili, who played the same role as Marx and Engels, was a socialist as well, who brought in fascism. Mussolini was a socialist as well. The leading Nazis were either in the Social Democratic Party in Germany, which was helped set up, and Marx was part of the Social Democrats, who obviously formed communism, or I think it was the Bavarian Socialist Party, who were in connection with the USSR. And none of which were very democratic once they got to power, exactly like Keir Starmer. So what is happening is that we are being diluted through the use of mass immigration, moved out. All the major cities are now getting depopulated of the indigenous Britons. And this has been deliberately done by the globalists. The Keir Starmer, who with those three children, I think one of the other girls died as well. Those three children had died. That he was going to protect the Muslims, and now bring in blasphemy laws to an ideology that says to murder and kill non-Muslims, which they've done successfully in multiple jurisdictions in countries all over the world. Don't forget, the Arabs were the first people to stand against Islam. But now they've all doffed the cap. What Islam is theocratic fascism. So we've got Keir Starmer, who's now just gone for an AIDS test, and we already know that he's getting bribed by Lord Ali, where Lord Ahmed is now on the sex register list, where Lord Ali, a gay lord, and if you look at Keir Starmer looks as gay as it comes. and he's now getting paid off to buy his wife's frilly knickers. That he's getting paid off by Lord Ali, and now they want to bring in blasphemy laws so that a theocratically fascist ideology would not be protected under law. So why are the globalists doing this? Because the globalists sit above Islam and the communists. Because even just now, even with the brainwashing in the universities by lecturers to indoctrinate a new generation of communists who may or may not grow out it in their 30s and 40s, only to get reintroduced by another bunch of communists who are going through the academia, which I think we have to look at individual lecturers all over. It's completely un-British. Yeah, of course it is, mate. Of course it's un-British. But this is not a British concept. What they want to do is move the legislative process out with democratic controls, such as the European Commission. It's completely Vita. Yeah, it's they want to take it out of control of democratic hands and put it into an unelected committee, which Brexit stopped them doing for the UK. But now we've got a communist like Keir Starmer. Now, the difficulty when you're identifying people's underlying motives is that you have to look at what they are. So Keir Starmer is a social democrat, potentially like Gordon Brown and Tony Blair. He's right out of that mould, but he's also on the extreme left as well. So they've got corporatist masters. In Davos, telling them what to do, flying in, tell them to do the green energy stuff. They'll implement it. That'll get kicked back to the actual globalists that are in Davos. So they'll use our industries. They'll be given, something was given to BlackRock in Scotland by Baldy John, and they'll use it. So, but that's a corporatist approach, but Keir Starmer is trying to bring in communism for the rest of us. So it's not in Islam, so it's a globalist that he's beholden to, and he'll do their bidding. But he's also of the communist ilk. He's probably a gay communist. That's what he looks like. That's what he come across. I thought of oh yes, Sir Lord Ali, and I don't know if you have to be an out-and-out paedophile to be in the candidates list for the Labour Party, but I think it certainly helps. So Baldy John has given something to BlackRock, but these people are deliberately giving industries to the corporatists in Davos. As he said, he prefers Davos to Westminster. I think he prefers Davos because it's not democratic. There's no democratic accountability. And the EU is just a staging post on the move towards a one world government. The one world government's already there in the way of the UN. And what Donald Trump is done is he's wanting to move the UN out of New York because they're working against the liberal, and I'm using liberal in the classical liberal or the libertarian liberal thesis of the New Enlightenment that America was based off of. And he's now wanting to move the UN to Africa or somewhere because he knows that the UN are a globalist shill organisation working to undermine both through open borders, through mass immigration, through undemocratic means, where a lot of the UN participant governments are undemocratic, that they're wanting to move the UN to Africa because he actually knows this. He knows that this was set up as an undemocratic organisation, a world government with no democratic accountability, which would then in turn make laws for the rest of the world. So the EU is only a staging post on the transferring of powers to an entity, whether it's the UN or not. A globalist entity which is not democratically accountable, will make legislation for the whole world and would be absolutely nightmarish. And that's why I said earlier on, it will end up like the Hunger Games, because you'll have a ruling elite, the rules won't apply to them and everybody else. They want to reduce population down to half a billion people, which means there'll be probably quite a bit of inbreeding. But even if there is inbreeding, and that causes inbreeding by taking it down, there's still people can make multiple children. But unless they're going to bring in something like China's one-child policy. And even if they actually want to do that, why do you think they're homosexualising everything? Why is the promotion of homosexuality from our societal point of view? The promotion of homosexuality. I'm not anti-gay, but I don't think from a societal point of view the promotion of homosexuality is going to benefit society, because obviously it's much more difficult for homosexuals to reproduce. But that's why they're making it trendy. That's why they're promoting it, because they've got a depopulation agenda, and the depopulation agenda is to bring it down to half a billion people. So, but they're not only are they want to reduce the indigenous population here in the UK, they also want to increase the amount of people who are coming in. So they've brought in people who are now standing outside primary schools, sexualising children, while the police do nothing, where Poofy Keir Starmer is doing nothing to actually stop it. And as they did with the Muslim child rape gangs, they facilitated it. The Labour Party facilitated the mass rapes of children, and are not bringing in a proper report, because there are people now, both in the Labour Party and from the Muslim part, and who are in the Labour Party. Your beard is looking class, mate, and so is your tie. Thanks, bud. They're not wanting to do a report on it, because they know that they've facilitated it, which is in essence a war crime. And if you haven't read what the Quran is a book of war on anybody else who's not a member of a child rapist death cult. So they will actually impose Sharia as submission to this theocratic fascist child rapist death cult, which we've already had Hamza Yusuf and Hamza Yusuf and Aina Sarwar swearing on it, who advocate for sex slavery and rape in the books by the Prophet. I'm late to chat. Did you get a wee cheeky korma? No, mate, I didn't get a wee cheeky korma. So this is the situation. So we're not only bringing in corporatism from the globalists, we're bringing in communism for Keir Starmer, who's facilitating the Islamo-fascists and members of the child rapist death cult, who are now murdering people in the UK, murdering children, raping children, and now they're not doing anything about it. Nothing is being done about it. They're not even having an inquest into this. So what's the principles if you're taking an anti-globalist? So don't forget, also back to the universities, so they're bringing in decolonisation, which is just anti-white racism. They've already brought in DEI. The so-called Conservative Party are bringing in DEI, which is the deliberate discrimination against the indigenous population. They're already bringing in anti-colonial stuff through the lecturers, the university lecturers, who might well be communists as well, because there's been a deliberate move to take anybody who's even centrist, forget being right wing or far right, even centrist, and bringing in communist lecturers at university. So this is the moves that the globalists have done, and they've done it for 40 years. So it's not going to matter if they're actually bringing in I've lost my train of thought there. It's not going to matter if they're bringing in DEI, or if it's the Conservatives, or it's the Labour, or it's the Liberals, or even the Scottish Nationalists. Scottish Nationalists are a globalist shill party as well. They're not a nationalist party. They're a globalist shill. Baldy John and Humza and Wee Nippy were all shilling for the globalists. And they brought in DEI. They brought in exactly the same policies the Conservative Party brought in. DEI, they want unrestricted immigration. They've been giving people injections, which we didn't know what these injections were. And this is the things that's been happening to Scotland, whether it be the Scottish Nationalists or the Conservative Party. And now there's claims that Wee Nippy was a CIA agent, and potentially a Humza as well. How much of those SNP bums are getting US aid? Well, we don't know, but we do know that Politico was funded. We do know that the BBC was taking bribes as well. We know this now, that it's all out in the open. So they know this. They know that this is actually happening. And the globalists in the United States, Biden, Kamala Harris, the world missed a bullet by not getting that retard in. We've had Weekend at Bernie's president for 4 years, and can you imagine having cackling Kamala instead of Donald? We wouldn't know any of this. We would not know any of this information had it not been for Donald Trump winning that election. That basically taxpayers' money are getting used to fund NGOs, and they are actually deliberately trying to subvert the UK and undermine it from the inside, whether it be people that have been imported, whether it's been the British state, whether it's the Lib Lab Con Party, the SNP, the so-called Welsh nationalists, fake. All of them have been on the globalist Davos train. It's not Conservative versus Labour, it's one, the Uni Party, as it's been phrased, Lib Lab Con Party, but also the Welsh and Irish Nationalists, and Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin are not a nationalist party, they're a globalist Davos shill party as well. So let's stop calling them nationalist party. They're wokey wefters. Every one of these individual parties are wokey wefter parties. So let's not move the UN to Larkhall. Every one of these have been shilling for the globalists for generations now. And that's what the situation is. They've shilled for the globalists. And they've used mass immigration to the extent, that they've ethnically cleansed London, Birmingham, and some other major cities down south of the indigenous English, to the extent where they're now a minority in their own cities. And this has been done by the people that you're voting for. So what would the anti-globalist agenda look like? How would it look like if you had an anti-globalist agenda? So you would have border controls. 1.2. Why do we need 1.2 million people? What was the purpose for that? Is that so that you can atomise the individual, and instead of like in the Matrix using them as a battery that produces electricity or heat, that you're actually just using them to overtax so that you can pay the NGOs to recycle the process of what your objectives are. And don't forget the moves to destroy the nation state and to have open borders and free movement. That's the globalist objective. The reason the Conservative Party through Theresa May had already signed us up to the treaty in Marrakesh, the refugee treaty in Marrakesh, but before that the Conservatives had signed us up to the Barcelona process and the Union of the Mediterranean. So this has been a long time coming. This is not just people haven't done. This has been well thought out in stages. And they have deliberately done this to the populace to the extent where children are being murdered and raped, and the state is using communist actors and probably agent provocateurs through MI5 probably and potentially in line with what's happened to the CIA, so that communists will come out. Don't forget the anti-racist events were sponsored by Diane Abbott. She's coordinating that. How a doughball like that is actually coordinating anything is beyond me, but she's coordinating with other communists these anti-racist events. But these anti-racists don't go down where white children are being murdered, or indigenous children are being murdered and raped, and they're not even prepared to look at that as racist, as potentially sectarian. Because don't forget, the Muslims are also raping Sikh, Hindu girls, children as well. But they're not even prepared to look at that. But now what's going to happen is there's now 4 Muslims and who's that? Uncle Albert, Uncle Harold, Uncle Albert, and so there's 5 pro-Muslim MPs sitting now, Islamofascists now sitting in Westminster, and now they're going to bring out more Islamofascism, and that'll undermine the Muslim vote for the Labour Party, because now they'll just cast the Muslims will just cast the Labour Party aside because of giving them a using. And because like gay Keir Starmer with all the paedophiles that are in the upper echelons of the Labour Party, who are probably controlled until they don't need them anymore, the Muslims are going to stop voting for the Labour Party. The Labour Party's already thrown the white working class under the bus, or the indigenous working class under the bus, and now the Muslims all vote for their own because they all know that they're all kiddie fiddlers and want to kill other people. The indigenous population is now going to have to be left with the ramifications of what the process of open borders and mass movement, freedom of movement, not just within the Schengen area. This was the Barcelona process in the Union of the Mediterranean, was a movement between North Africa and the Middle East. So it doesn't matter if they are bringing in drugs, raping your children, murdering your children. They'll protect them before they'll protect you, until the Muslims siphon themselves off from the Labour Party and have Islamic Party, Islamic Party, but they will eventually get an Islamic Party, and then the Labour Party, because they have thrown the indigenous working class under the bus, I don't know where they're going to get their support from. So they're not going to get any support from the Muslims once the Muslims became even more sectarian politically and formed their own sectarian parties. So I don't know whether you're going to get the Christian party or the atheist party. So you're going to have all these sectarian groups, or the Hindu party. So you're going to get all these sectarian groups that are going, or you might just have one party that's anti-Muslim and one party that's pro-Muslim. Because just as undemocratic as Keir Starmer is by cancelling these elections, don't think Islam's a democratic entity. Islam believes in theocratic totalitarianism and the implementation of the camel piss drinking child rapist Muhammad. So that's what they believe in. So if you're not up to speed on the political ideologies, I would suggest that you take a minute, go and look at what Pabloism is, what Keir Starmer, who's getting bribed by Lord Ali, the gay Lord Ali, to stay around at his bit for £100,000. While at the same time he's bringing in blasphemy laws, which is anti-liberal, anti-libertarian, anti-freedom of speech. And so we've now got the GIMPs, the Globalist Islamo-Marxist Party, and it was quite funny when I challenged Anis Sarwar on it. The Anis didn't actually say anything. He didn't say, "Oh no, it's not." He just tried to laugh it off, and that's what they do. They try to laugh off the fact that there's still no national. What do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? National. What's when you look into something? Inquiry into all the Muslim rape gangs in 50 cities. They're not shouting racism about that. They're just wanting to bring in the blasphemy laws so that the people can be silenced, and the people will go to jail. So not only is he anti-democratic, he's bringing in anti-freedom of speech laws, he's also cancelling democratic processes, but he's also now trying to saddle up to the EU and bring us back into the EU through the back door. And that's what he's trying to do. It's again undemocratic, because it's not. This is where they try and gaslight you again. It's not the parliament, the elected parliament, that dictates the legislation. It's the 28 unelected commissioners who are all handpicked by the WEF and the Globalists, and they decide what the corporatist oligarchy or the corporatist globalist state want. And it's certainly not capitalism, and it's certainly not freedom of speech. And they don't mind if they ethnically cleanse you and call you a racist while they do it, or rape and murder your children. I haven't heard Keir Starmer say anything about that, apart from quickly laying a reef and disappearing. But he was going to protect the Muslims, because raping and murdering your children isn't the problem. You complaining about it is the problem. So why are the globalists using the Muslims as a religious ideology, a religiously theocratically fascist ideology? Because it fits in with their agenda. They're not Democrats either. The corporatists in Davos are not Democrats. That's why Keir Starmer loves them. But they're not also, because they're not capitalists or corporatists, Keir Starmer sort of quasi fits in, because the corporatists, even though they're trying to push an agenda, the corporatists have worked with the communists to undermine democracy and undermine freedom of speech, capitalism, and to undermine these processes which allow individual liberty and freedoms. Because that's not what Keir Starmer is or wants. So what would the anti-globalist agenda look like? So initially, be border controls, deportation of illegal immigrants, no benefits for up to 3 years for people who have just come to the country, so they wouldn't be able to come here and be a drain on the system. 20 years before they could actually apply for council houses, whether they're they can get housing benefit to pay for the housing, but they would have to rent in the private sector, they wouldn't get in the public sector. So thereby, we're not actually allowing our own people to be on the streets. We would not allow the government to impose any legislation that would prevent or be seen as corporatist and not capitalist. So if there was any barriers to entry, so I could set up my own bank, and it would be a small bank to start off with. There might be rules, but the rules I would have the latitude for the first 3 years of startup, because obviously costs, if I had no money, the bank would have to be started up from nothing. But there is no rules that will prevent me from actually starting up my own bank, which is libertarian in its ideology. And not corporatist, because what we know that they're doing is that the Davos mob are using corporatist legislation to prevent competition, and thereby and even allowing foreign businesses to dominate in the UK, where our own political class stifle entrepreneurship internally, and allow the foreign companies, foreign globalist corporate companies, to take the market. So we all know that the high street's dying, but Amazon's doing very well. So there is obviously no UK tax, I don't think, on Amazon, but there'll be taxes on purchasing things. There'll be taxes on rates, and there'll be individual taxes. So there'll be tons of taxes for an individual to break into the high street and run their own shop now. Yet the globalist entities are not being taxed. So you would either have to reduce taxation on the indigenous on the indigenous entrepreneurs or shopkeepers. Don't forget, we're a nation of shopkeepers. But you would have to reduce the taxation on shopkeepers to allow new entrants into the market. And this is what where we're at. We have got a major problem in the fact of overtaxation as well. So what we would do, what's an anti-globalist agenda? We would have to reduce individuals' taxation. Somebody just mentioned USAID or AID-US, and where they're using taxpayers' money to pay for Chelsea Clinton's wedding. I think £3 million of taxpayers' money was used for that purpose. There's been multiple purposes for drag shows in Colombia to transing people, and that's another thing. The trans, if you again back to the depopulation, if you're actually cutting off people's genitals, one, you're probably less attractive to the opposite sex, but the fact is that you're not reproducing. So if you've just eunuched your son, then you're not going to reproduce. So again, this comes back to the depopulation movement by the globalists as well, where they want to reduce the population down to 500 million. So these are all the things that we have to look at, and it's been pushed. People were saying anti-Semitic things like it's been pushed by some Jewish people. This has been pushed by, but I don't know if that's true or not. But the fact is that it's definitely been pushed. It's definitely been pushed, and this is a problem. From the reproduction. So they're doing everything by the promotion of homosexuality, the promotion of transing people, making women feel unsafe, so there's less interaction between men and women by importing people who advocate rape and sexual slavery in Islam. These women are left slaves, and also men are left safe because the police aren't doing their job. They've been deliberately told to stand down. The courts aren't doing their job. They've been deliberately told to stand down. And what we're going to end up is in a civil war, which Elon Musk had already pointed out, because neither the police, the courts, or the legislator are actually bringing in bills that stop actual crimes. They want to thought police you, which we've already seen, and there's the Silver Fox being arrested for things he said about immigration. So you're not allowed to say things, so they're already now trying to imprison. Keir Starmer is trying to imprison and make people's life a misery by making up thought policing, which is Orwellian. Keir Starmer must have read 1984 and thought it was an instruction manual. But again, we already know he's shilling. He's already on the record for saying he's shilling for the Globalist anyway. So he's a Pablo's communist who is now shilling for the corporatists, globalists, who want to turn the world into the Hunger Games. So, what can you do? First of all, you need to stop voting for the Lib Lab Con Party, the Greens, any far left party, the SNP or the Welsh Nationalists, all of which are just wokey wefters. They're all wokey wefters. They're all for open door immigration. Kemi Badenoch's not going to do nothing about immigration. She's just going to continue the wokey weft agenda. She was on trigonometry saying, oh, we made some mistakes, and they allowed people in the dinghies to come over. They allowed 1.2 million people to come over. And that's what happened with them. And they basically allowed this process to happen. And they're not going to fix it. You wouldn't put the fox in charge of the chicken coop. They are not going to fix it. Treachery is off the scale, yeah. They are not interested in doing anything to help you. Forget about it, up to including rape and murder. And they're not only are the Lib Lab Con Party, the SNP and the Greens not doing it about it, they're facilitating it by the open door immigration, by not taking actual crime seriously, by putting the onus of police on thought policing. Orwellian. So we have to restore individual liberty. This is liberalism or libertarianism or libertarian liberalism. We have to probably ban Islam because it advocates violence, child rape. And let me see if I can get this. I don't know if I can get this up. Wonder if I could do it off my phone. Let me see if I can do it this way. Oh, no, can't do it. Maybe try this one. Let me try one more time. See if I can get them. See if I can get him. Where is he? Christ. Just talk amongst yourselves. I wonder if I can go on this. Let me try one last thing. Here we go. Ah! Oh. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is it. Where's the... that's it. Let me just find it.
In the U.S.
What's going on here? Why is that not letting me move? Oh, here we go. Oh, here we go. This is now, I'm not a Christian. But this guy's right. This guy is a Christian.
Lord and Muhammad into the 21st century. If we brought our Lord and Muhammad into the 21st century, and they lived a modern version of their past lives, right? Jesus would be considered by some an
Jewish hippie,
eccentric spiritual teacher, by others the Messiah. He would be worshipped as God by his followers. He would be treated as a great spiritual teacher. Muhammad would be in prison for war crimes against.
So, as I said, the Quran is a book of war against anybody else who's not a Muslim. So that's what we have to listen to. He's correct in what he says. I learned it because I read it myself.
Against humanity, or imprisoned for paedophilia.
So he'd be in prison for paedophilia because he married a 6-year-old and had sex with her when she was 9, Aisha.
Or in prison for.
So he was in prison for rape because he had sex slaves. Mary the Copt, or Maria the Copt, she had sex slaves. So that's why ISIS had sex slaves markets where they were raping children and passing about children and other Yazidi women.
Or in prison for enslavement.
So in prison for enslavement, as I said, Maria the Copt. So he was an enslaver as well. That's why you've got the East African slave trade Muslim, the Turkish slave trade Muslim, the North African slave trade Muslim. That's why you've got so many Muslim slave trades. That's only some of them. ISIS, slave trade Muslim. Because they believe that Muhammad was the perfect man when he was a rapist, a murderer, a paedophile and a sex slaver. So if you're promoting these values in a Western country, I would suggest that should be criminal in itself and you should go to jail or be deported to country of origin.
Or in prison. Like, that's just one kind of way to kind of summarize it. The moral substance of our Lord Jesus Christ and the moral substance of Muhammad are like worlds apart. They're on the opposite sides of the spectrum. If we brought...
So I thought that was quite interesting. I just thought I would allow you to hear that, but that's certainly something that I don't think people actually take into consideration. So let me see. That's good. So that's if you don't understand that, that's part of Islam, and if people worship that as the ideal inspiration, then I would suggest they shouldn't be in normal society, because if you've got a paedophile, a rapist, a murderer as your main protagonist in your story, who advocates doing that to other people who are not in your cult, I would say your cult shouldn't be here. So that's just part. So that's another section. But why are the globalists pushing Islam, killing off, allowing people to kill and rape, and bringing in foreign competition? You always hear them talking about inward investment, but you don't hear them talking about providing investment for entrepreneurs in the UK. I've tried to get investment in several occasions. I've never managed once to get any investment. So if we've got foreign bodies that are not giving out investments to indigenous entrepreneurs, we should just kick them out and actually set up our own companies where we actually set up our own entrepreneurs and in our own industries based on this. We don't have to allow foreign companies that are not going to benefit our country in, or we can deport them. They can be deported back to country of origin, just like Pakistan did to the Afghanis who are trying to attack and undermine the Pakistanis in Pakistan. No outcry there. So entrepreneurship, Team Britain, having individual freedoms, liberties, a proper immigration policies where we deport individuals, stronger courts where we sack judges or make them accountable, a police force that's maybe even democratically elected, although I think there's obviously, we've seen the ability to gerrymander the democratic elections, or not to have them in the case of Keir Starmer not wanting to have democratic elections in England now, because he knows he's going to lose, because he's been a disaster, because he's a communist and a globalist shill. But the average individual is not paying attention, which shows you why nobody's listening to the anti-globalist agenda on X, because the individuals are not paying attention to what is actually happening. They are just oblivious. The average man and woman in the streets gets their news from the BBC, which is getting paid off by Aid US or USAID or whatever it's called, like Politico, getting paid off, and they will tell you what they want, the globalists want to show you, and what they don't, they will not. And that's the reality of the situation. They will not teach you, they will not tell you what's going on, up to including the rape and murder of your children. And that's what the Labour Party, all the Labour Party, you should find out, I don't know if which political parties voted against an inquiry, but they have deliberately done that. So the first thing we would get is an inquiry into the 50 cities where Muslims have been practicing their religion and by raping and murdering children. Deport all non-nationals who have just been allowed to emigrate here. Don't forget the emigration is deliberately to allow open borders so that there's no borders at all, so that people can just walk up. So you would basically get ethnic cleansing, which is illegal under international law. If you look on the website, the Declaration of Genocide, that to just displace a population deliberately is against international law, and we all know that Keir Starmer is very keen on not actually preventing international law or upholding international law. So that's what they're deliberately doing. They're deliberately displacing the indigenous population. Now Keir Starmer wants to spend millions of pounds or billions of pounds through a mastermind and total retard Lammy, who I think he thinks he's still in the Caribbean, who's obviously not looking after the indigenous UK's population, and he wants to spend trillions of pounds. My family never had slaves, so I shouldn't be getting penalised through taxation. And I'm really pissed off as well that I've had to pay taxation, or my family's had to pay taxation to pay off the slave owners. So if I've never had slaves, my family's never had slaves, we were certainly never recompensed for having any slaves, that we've paid through our taxation to pay off the slave owners to let the slaves out. And now we're going to, those of us have not, the majority of people would not have seen an African, never mind actually had slaves, would not have seen an African. So why would we be paying for and we didn't have the vote either, so we never voted to be slave owners. It was a small elite class that were the slave owners. Probably the same people are doing are the globalists as well. They're not morally challenged into the fact that they have to give up the money. Why should people who didn't have the vote, who didn't have slaves, have to fit a bill for people who didn't have slaves? And don't forget, in Jamaica, they were slave owners. There's people who look like Dave Lammy who were actually slaves and slave owners, while the people here didn't have any slaves. The vast majority of people didn't have slaves. But yeah, again, it's another, like US aid, it's another way of rinsing taxpayers' money. And that's what it is. That's why they want to do it. That's why Poofy Bumboy Keir Starmer wants to actually and bought off Keir Starmer for £100,000, bribed Keir Starmer, is is wanting to bring it in, because they'll just rinse taxpayers' money. People who were never slave owners will be paying people who might have been slave owners, who look maybe African, but may have had a white parent or a black parent who might have been slave owners. Yet the majority of people here would not be slave owners and would not have even probably seen a black person, an African person, sorry, I keep getting the racialised, an African person, and not had any slaves. Yet they're, through the mass taxation, are going to have to pay people who might have been slave owners compensation. Come on. And not only that, not having the vote, we did not have universal suffrage up to very recently, probably in the last 100 years, including the right for women to vote. So, I mean, really, it's absolutely unbelievable. But again, this is a way for them to rinse the taxpayer. There you've got wee what's-her-face, who's that wee doughball as well? I've gone off her as well. Who's Kate Forbes, you would come back to me. Kate Forbes saying that she thinks that the UK is overtaxed, or Scotland's overtaxed. Oh, do you think so? Was that an epiphany? You are increasing taxation and getting less tax receipts, you absolute bunch of morons. But I think it's either ideologically done, it's either been done because they are socialists, or it's been done because they are they want to penalise the individual and make their life so unbearable, and that they can't actually get on from generation to generation. They'll just get overtaxed. And this is what's been the left's proposal. It's not the tax is being redistributed. The tax goes in to the state, and then the state provides you services back. Why is the state providing services? We already know that we've got a whole bunch of incompetence in the Scottish Parliament just now as it is. And they're increasing taxation and providing terrible or not very good services. I mean, really? So there has to be a reduction in taxation, a stimulation of growth. So the Labour Party said that we're going to grow the economy, and they've increased taxation and reduced growth, and then blame Brexit for it. There was a Brexit black hole, while at the same time raising inheritance tax on landowners by £500 million and giving that to foreign countries. Landowners and farmers, and raising taxation to increase growth. I mean, you couldn't write it. It's like, if you do exactly the opposite of what you're actually doing, you'll be in a lot better shape. And this is the problem. And people are voting for this because, as we can see on this X, there's nobody listening, and all of these people who are could be listening, or could be actually resonating with them, are not paying attention, and the voter is causing these problems because they're not up to speed politically on what's actually happening. So border control, deporting illegal immigrants, reduction in taxation, even bringing a constitution that requires freedom of speech, potentially sacking communist lecturers and having a rebalancing of the universities and globalist lecturers. Because that's just a factory for bringing out we tried to commie gimps, commie Islamo-globalists, Marxist, globalist Islamo-Marxist parties, members. this is what's got to have to happen. We have to change the way that this is working. We have to bring in banning Islam, not just Sharia courts, banning Islam. Because of what I've shown you, because of what is in the Quran, you have to ban Islam. If Muslims don't like it, deport them back to country of origin. It's no problem, because the downside is that your children are being raped and murdered. And the Labour Party, because they pimped him out for Muslim votes, which it looks like it's going to fracture, don't care if your children are raped and murdered, because if there was a national inquiry, they would have to be held responsible. And people would have to go to jail. Police officers, social security, social services, councillors, MPs, former, potentially right up to prime ministers, because they've sold us out to the globalist agenda. Squint Eye Magoo, Gordon Brown sold us out, Tony Blair sold us out, Cameron sold us out, and every one of those people in the media are all part of the people who have sold us out, and that's the reality. That's what we are doing. That's what we are looking at just now, and that's what's happening. So we have to have anti-globalist, anti-theocratically fascist parties who will stand against Islam, Marxism, the globalists, and we have to have parties. It's sort of happening just now, thank God for Donald Trump, but we can see who the sellouts are. We've now got them all targeted. We know who the sellouts are, and we can now take concrete moves. If they're going to set up an Islamist party, we might be having to set up a party where people are deported back to country of origin. If they're not wanting to fit in, then ship out. So that's what will be happening. Or it might lead to civil unrest. The people didn't look at what happened in Iran. They didn't look at what happened in Lebanon when they invited people in, and they're just doing exactly the same in the UK. And now we're being governed by institutions. Globalist institutions are not democratically accountable, like the UN, like the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, like the EU Commission, none of which have been democratically or accountable to the populace, but bringing in legislation, bringing in policy, because what the UK Parliament have done is shipped out policy to unaccountable, unelected, undemocratic bodies, just as what they're trying to do with the councils down in England. And you shouldn't pay your taxation, you shouldn't pay your taxes because of this. You should stop paying your taxes. And then we're getting interfered. We're getting people like myself, like Dave, the Silver Fox, being criminalised for bringing attention to this. Because these people are communists. These are gimps. These are globalist Islamo-Marxist party exponents. And that's the Uni-Party. That is the different shades of the Uni-Party, which are going to fight, because the people who are the anti-racists don't know what's going to hit them, because they all get killed by the Muslims in Iran. They get killed in Lebanon. So they've facilitated it, and they've allowed the children to be murdered and raped. They facilitated it for their votes to keep them in power, because they're thick and they wouldn't get in power otherwise. And now they've facilitated this. And now what they're going to do, the beast is going to turn on the anti-racists, and they'll all get done by the Muslims. I mean, because they're just infidels, unless they convert, infidels like the rest. So they've already said they want to take over the UK, and we have allowed it to happen through the Lib Lab Con Party, the Greens, the SNP, and the Plaid Cymru, and for that matter, Sinn Féin. They've allowed all to happen, and they've facilitated it. Right. I think I'll do a part 2 of this, the anti-globalist agenda, where I'll go into the anti-globalist agenda more. But baby gorillas, love you guys. Good to chat there, guys. Good to see you. Hopefully that's the sound fixed, and we can go out to a flying start next time. I'm out here.